Ladies and gentlemen, RosterWatch Nation, welcome back to the epic RosterWatch Podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap, and joining me on a rare three-man edition of the podcast, it's the RosterWatch Founders Edition, the Founders final rookie roundup here for the 2021 rookie class. Of course, we have the Trashman, we have Byron Lambert, we have our rookie rankings, we have our final takes. We have everything that's about to go up on the site at rosterwatch.com for our pro members. Byron, Trashman, what the hell's going on, boys?
Oh, I'm just convalescing.
Same.
Well, now you guys have to tell me what that means.
Knows what that word means. You've been firing out a bunch of words I don't know lately. On text, man. I'm like, all right, Alex has really gotten into this vocabulary thing. It's good, man. You just got to look those words up. You got to use them a few times. You text me about some kind of back and napkin logic, heuristic. I won't forget that. Trash, man, what is convalesce? Do you know what that is?
Is that like to coalesce? I know what that means.
The coalescing is when you're on the mend, you're healing.
Yeah. Well, you're kind of on the mend.
Recuperating.
You are recuperating from your calf injury.
Yeah, I'm convalescing. Exactly.
I'm recuperating too. I'm convalescing too.
What are you recuperating from? Just being a disgusting
something much better, something much more enjoyable, I think.
Okay. Well, nobody's enjoying the small talk here. Let's get into the rookie.
She just left.
Oh, well, that maybe they could enjoy that if it's about if it's about a lady.
The Trashman After Hours podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good to have you boys on. It'll be good to hear everybody's takes. I have not even heard Byron's takes on the rookies and stuff like that. So a couple of objectives here. One, we'll be putting out the 2021 staff rookie rankings pre-NFL draft over at rosterwatch.com at the running back and the wide receiver position. It looks like at the wide receiver position, we'll have about 33 of these guys ranked. At least ones that I've looked at. Now, as far as guys who are written up that we've done the actual evaluations on, that's probably more like 20 to 24, 25, which I consider good. I'm glad we were able to get that many done. As far as running backs, we know that it's a not quite as deep a class this year. We'll have write-ups on probably 8 of these guys, 8 to 9, but we'll have all the analytic profile stuff up on the site in the on the rookie rankings, just the cumulative sheet where you can look at the different market shares, the different production stuff, the spark scores, the production numbers, all the height, weight, hand, arm, 40 times, etc., age. You'll have everything that you need to help make your decisions. And of course, right after the NFL draft occurs, we will have the Dynasty rookie cheat sheet that we'll get started on Sunday, and that should be up early. Usually it's up by Monday or Tuesday, V 1.0, maybe Wednesday. I don't know. But that'll be up, ASAP, because we know that a bunch of you guys will be getting rookie drafts going on just as soon as the NFL draft ends. So we will try and get V1 up by early there in that week, and we will get started on Sunday for sure. So with all that being said, we've talked a bunch about Devonta Smith. We've talked a bunch about JamarrChase, these guys up here at the very top. And so I told Trashman before, let's not waste our time writing these guys up. People are going to hear about them from us throughout the course of the offseason. The same was true of, say, like guys like Naja Harris and travisetienne. We wanted to make sure that our write-ups and the stuff that we really concentrated on was more of these players who you might not have heard quite as much about. But I do want some kind of content on these 4 players: JamarrChase, the wide receiver out of LSU; Devonta Smith, the wide receiver out of Alabama; Naja Harris, the running back out of Alabama; and travisetienne, the running back out of Clemson, to sort of link to, for if anybody, I mean, we could have users that, just tune right back in to the rankings and hadn't listened to anything before, doesn't know these guys from Adam. So let's just hit on each of these guys just real quick. We'll start with the wide receivers. Devonta Smith, out of Alabama. He was a senior, of course. Everybody saw him in the national championship game, and just the most epic first half that we'd ever seen. He exited that game with a finger injury, which he used as an excuse not to do anything through the pre-draft process. He was at the Senior Bowl, declined to weigh in at the Senior Bowl. The issue with him the whole time has been his weight, and the weight finally came in. He said he was 170 throughout his college career. The weight actually at the Combine Medical came in at 166, which is a little bit of an issue, but not a small guy, though, as far as everything's concerned. Tall, skinny. It's hard to even find a comp for him. He will be 23 years old. He has great production. Trashman, what do you think?
Well, I mean, Deshaun Jackson, what did he come on at? I think he came on at 169.
Yeah, but Deshaun Jackson, right? But Deshaun Jackson was a lot faster than Devonta Smith appears to be. Devonta Smith is twitched up and he's a great route runner, but he's just a different. I mean, he's smooth. You know, it's not a.
Well, I mean, I guess my argument being that, you know, Deshaun Jackson has never had issues. I mean, being that slight and and dealing with cornerbacks and the physicality of cornerbacks in the NFL. And so I feel like when you have a guy like Devonta Smith, who isn't, I mean, he's not going to be your, for all intents and purposes, he's not going to be your chain mover. You know, he's going to be a guy who makes big plays for you. And a player like that, and Deshaun Jackson is of a similar ilk, you know.
I think that he could be.
He's not your possession guy. I mean, he could. I mean, Devonta Smith, he's got hands like that, but you know, I don't. It doesn't bother me as much as it bothers everybody else. Maybe because it's all about speed and it's all about smoothness and quickness in the NFL today. It doesn't bother me at all that he's that slight.
Byron, I mean, it feels like it has to bother you because there's not any, but we don't have any sort of precedent for a player this small. I know Trashman said Deshaun Jackson, but the BMI wasn't the issue with Deshaun Jackson. Smitty's he's tall. He's over 6 feet tall and he weighs 166 pounds. He'll be 23 this year, but just the production was insane. I mean, 36. This was the best Alabama This is one of the best offenses we've seen. 2019 LSU, 2020 Alabama, two of the best that we've seen in our life, right? And he had 36% of the market share of receptions, 40% of the market share of receiving yards, 55% of the market share of receiving touchdowns. Of course, this is with Jalen Waddle, who I'm sure we'll talk about, injured for everything but the first 4 games of the season. Jalen Waddle looked like he was set to have this kind of season before then. But Devonta Smith, he had a great 2019 too, even with guys like Jerry Jeudy still there and Henry Ruggs still there. So where are you on Devonta Smith? I mean, you could talk about how you have him. Where you have him ranked. I'm sure you have him ranked towards the top, but where are you on Devonta Smith, and what was your general take after doing the work on him?
Well, the weight is a problem just because it's at least somewhat of an outlier. And the BMI is more of an outlier than the weight is, given his height. That is a problem because you want corroboration through this process. And when you have I think it's a good wide receiver class. You got a lot of good options here. You know, you want to go with, you want to go with something that's kind of a sure thing, right? So it gives you pause. It's definitely something to wrestle with. That said, Deshaun Jackson's definitely one of my comps. So I agree with
you guys. Both came up with this Deshaun Jackson thing
from the way I get the speed's different, but just the way his body type looks and moves out there, I see the similarities. I actually see body type wise, I see kind of a Deshaun Jackson, D.D. Westbrook.
Well, I had D.D. Westbrook is one of my comps. Yeah.
But to your point, Alex, he plays more like a Nelson Aguilar or an Odell Beckham. So I do think he can move the chain some on things like slant routes. He's a very slick route runner and he's long, right? So I think at the end of the day, you look at those comps, you say it's a pretty good set of comps. And I mean, the career was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right. Again, in the SEC. And I do think he actually can move some chains a little bit. I think so. He's not a pure Deshaun Jackson, of course, but I see a little Nelson Aguilar, a little bit of Odell. It's a guy you don't want to get too low on. Now I have him ranked at 3 below his teammate Jalen Waddle. I mean, Jalen Waddle just blew me away. He truly looks like Tyreek Hill, in my opinion. I know a lot of folks are saying that. But yeah, Devonta Smith is a guy you have a little bit of pause about. But overall, I think you zoom out and you say, man, that profile's pretty damn good. You don't want to get too low on Devonta Smith.
I mean, the thing is, you add 10 pounds to him, add 10 pounds of muscle, and he's Will Fuller,
And at that, you would think, what's his age? Let's see here. We got Devonta Smith is
23.
I mean, you would think at 6'1" he could add a little weight. He might not ever be more than 170.
I mean, he didn't. I think he added like 6 pounds the whole time he was in college.
You know,
and he was at Alabama. I mean, you know that they.
Yeah, but that said, you got people that are very excited, rightfully so, about Elijah Moore. He's 178. I get the BMI is different because he's a little shorter, but do we really want shorter receivers? Like, so at some point, you're 5'8" pounds. I mean, you know, we've seen some successful receivers, Deshaun Jackson, Marquise Brown, guys like that, a little bit slighter. And I do think that Devonta Smith is, look, the first thing we look for is route running, especially in young wide receivers. And he's just an excellent route runner. So that's going to give him a pretty good shot.
I mean, like, I just don't remember the last time we even brought up a player's weight.
Because we've never fucking trashed me. We've never had somebody who won't weigh through the whole time, who creates this huge distraction about it. It was like Devonta Smith didn't have to cause all this.
No, I'm talking
he could have just stepped on a goddamn scale.
Talking about post-draft. I'm talking about during the course of an NFL season. Like, it's never come up. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's not a problem until it is one.
Okay.
I think it's fair though that you're probably drafting him as your like wide receiver 2 if you're an NFL.
Well, and as a good wide receiver 2. I mean, one of my comps is Calvin Ridley. Yeah, he was drafted as a really good wide receiver 2.
Calvin Ridley, that's a very, very good comp, Alex. But
Calvin Ridley's only a wide receiver 2 on a team with Julio Jones.
He's kind of the wide receiver 1 now, for being honest.
Well, there's Julio trade rumors, so he very well. We'll see if anything unfolds there, but that could happen. You know, I think that's the argument. You want to draft a wide receiver 2 in the top 10 of the draft, maybe if it's the right guy and it's a position of need.
Well, you can listen to our podcast from the last podcast we did. We have a bunch of content this week. It's a busy hair on fire week, but we did the meeting of the minds, the mock draft meeting of the minds last night with Mike Band. You can see where Band and I believe had him falling out of the top 10. And Gettleman coming to save the day out of nowhere to take him to the Giants.
I mean, Travis Benjamin's 175 pounds and 5'10".
I don't give a shit, man. If we're talking about Travis Benjamin, like then you have made it. Then you have made a horrible decision.
I guess the point I'm making is have we ever had issue with Travis Benjamin in the NFL and regarding his size?
Yes, he sucks, and he's not an NFL player.
No, but it doesn't have to do with his size.
How do you know? What if Travis Benjamin was 215 pounds? Maybe he could have been an impact player. Like, of course, it might have to do with his size. Like, who knows? It's correlation, causation. I mean,
Travis Benjamin has been an impact player in stretches.
Okay, trash man. Jesus Christ. Let's talk about Jamarrchase. I don't want to get you down the Travis Benjamin rabbit hole here. We're talking about the top wide receivers in the class.
Question is, how strong is the relationship between size and target volume? How many targets can Devonta Smith soak up at the next level at 170, 170?
In today's NFL, I think more.
Okay, that's fine. I love Devonta Smith. I think he's going to be great. He's my wide receiver too.
This is the softest NFL we've ever seen.
Yeah, and it'll continue getting it'll continue like that. Okay, I have Jamarrchase ranked over Devonta Smith. You said that, Byron, you had Jamarrchase, who came in a little bit lighter than we expected, but still not as disappointing a weigh-in as to say like a Rashad Bateman that came in at 190 when we were expecting more like 205, 210. We were expecting the same out of Jamarrchase, but he came in at 201, 9 5/8 inch hands. He had the adjusted 4.39 40 time. He'll only be 21 this year. 27% production score. So he had a 20% market share of receptions, a 30% market share of receiving yards for LSU in his final 2019 season, a 33% market share of receiving touchdowns. So we talked about Devonta Smith being the receiving weapon and the premier weapon of that 2020 Alabama team under Steve Sarkisian that was arguably the best offense that we've ever seen in college. The only argument for the other one is the one that we saw with Joe Brady, Joe Burrow, and Jamarrchase, right? And so Jamarrchase just sat out the season. He's like, screw you guys. You've seen enough of me. And when it's funny because when I watched the national championship game, I'd seen Devonta Smith for 2 years. I said to myself, Devonta Smith's going to be my number one wide receiver in this class. It's just like, how can it, I mean, it's like, I should just say it now so I can remember it. But then you remember you said that I said the same things about Jamar Chase, and he didn't come out in that draft. And you go back and you watch Jamar Chase. Byron, you mentioned earlier some Odell Beckham stuff that you saw with Devonta Smith. I see the Odell Beckham stuff with Jamar Chase, a guy who's, only 6 feet tall, only 201, but plays a little bit bigger and can seem to stretch his hands and make these kinds of catches that look like there's from such a bigger man, but he's got the speed and the route running precision mixed with a little bit of size as a Terry McLaurin. And when I talk about an Odell Beckham mixed with a Terry McLaurin, I start to think, how can I not have this guy ranked number one, especially with the Devonta Smith size issues? Where are you on? Before we go to Trashman, I just want to ask Byron, where are you on Jamar Chase? Is he your number one guy? And just what did you see whenever you're watching him?
Yeah, Jamar Chase, my number one. The things that stood out is the pro day. I mean, nobody was sure. People were worried about Devonta Smith's weight. People were worried 6 weeks ago about Jamar Chase's speed. He went out there and blew the pro day up, ran very fast, jumped out of the building. So he put all that to bed. You have this excellent tape, and then you find out the guy is, extremely athletically gifted. And the thing that really stood out to me about Jamar Chase, Alex, that Odell Beckham element definitely exists to his game. And I like the Terry McLaurin one. But the thing that stands out about Jamar Chase, if you really look at him and look at his body type, and I was watching some of his videos of him training at MJP, that dude is ripped.
Mm-hmm.
He is.
Yeah.
His calves are like a running back, dude. He is incredibly strong and muscular and powerful. So when I started thinking about that, I heard somebody else mention a Steve Smith comp. And I said, man, I see that a little bit too. Steve Smith was angry, powerful, could get deep, could get across the middle, just totally versatile, can run every route in the book.
Rocked up with some armor too.
Oh, just a beast. So I see kind of a Steve Smith.
I'll add that onto the comps list here in the sheet.
McLaurin that fits just fine as well. The other thing that really stood out was his catch radius. Our friend Matt Kelly over at Player Profiler, a 94% catch radius for a player who's 6 foot tall. Think that kind of answers those questions a little bit. So for me, I hate to sound like a broken record, but look, we loved CeeDee Lamb last year. A lot of people had Judy kind of right there with Lamb. It's pretty fair to say last year that those two guys were the highest ranked wide receiver prospects since Amari Cooper, and we gave the edge to Lamb. I think we still feel very, very good about that.
Yes.
I love CeeDee Lamb, but I think if you made me rank him, I'd have to give.
Well, that's a tough discussion. That's a tough discussion that I wasn't ready for. Because that's an issue that I had to deal with whenever I was dealing away a rookie pick in one of my dynasty leagues. Where I'm like, man, this is either going to be Jamar Chase or I can trade it away for the bird in hand, and CeeDee Lamb, and I went ahead and made the trade. I should have called you about that if it was something that I knew you thought about so much. I would have loved to have somebody. I would have loved to have a sympathetic ear as I was trying to talk myself into that, but I ended up making the.
I think it's a fine trade. I understand where you're coming from, and we're splitting hairs to some extent. So at that point, why not take the known commodity in fantasy for an offense that you love? I think that makes perfect sense from a pre-draft prospect evaluation process. Jamar Chase is ultimately going to be my highest graded wide receiver since Amari Cooper.
So
6 years ago.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a big news. And just you mentioned, I didn't realize how good the combine or how good the pro day was. 86 percentile 20-yard split on the 40, a 95th percentile 40, a 95th percentile vert, a 95th percentile broad, a 94th percentile short shuttle. So he's not only explosive, but and you see it on tape, but he's just agile as hell.
He's nasty, man.
Trashman, anything extra to say on Jamar Chase? Is he your number one, or do you still have Devonta Smith number one? We know that you love him and you're super trashy.
Actually, neither of them are my number one.
Really? Okay.
No.
Love to hear it.
So good tease.
Okay.
One of the, but Chase, he's got really good acceleration. To me, that's kind of what pops off the screen from me. like you're saying, he's very powerful, aggressive. I mean, like Steve Smith, I think is a really good comparison. I also think he kind of reminds me a little bit, just in his ability to really do everything, DeAndre Hopkins. I see some of that in him, and just his ability to just dominate on the field. And I feel like DeAndre Hopkins has an underrated catch radius. We don't really talk about that often, but when's the last time you saw a ball get away from DeAndre Hopkins? Yeah. But so I really like him. And it's one of those things where he's good at a lot of things, so it's not that terribly exciting for me as a player. That he can excel in the NFL. That he's going to be somebody's number one wide receiver, has the capability to do so. He's one of those guys that does a lot of things really well. But my number one is a guy who just, you watch him and it looks like he's.
Don't tell. Don't tell, because we got to talk about these two running backs first, and then we'll get back into the wide receiver rankings. We'll talk some running back rankings.
I think Byron probably has a good idea.
Okay, let's see. So let's go to the running backs, and let's just go with Devonta Smith's teammate, Naja Harris. We saw him at the Senior Bowl. He did not work in drills at 100%, but during certain drills, he went at about 75% team stuff, just enough to where he could go out there and show you that he looked bigger, badder, just much better than all the rest of the players. Catching the football out of the backfield, they made sure and show that off. I think the NFL teams knew that they wanted to see certain things out of Naja Harris, so whenever he did get his work at the very beginnings of practice, they would really feature him in these half-speed drills. Byron will, I'm sure, talk more about this, what we saw out of his hands and the different situations that they put him in. Just in these, and I guess we might have lost Byron there for a second. He'll hop back in. But Trashman, I don't know if you got to see him at all, but Naja Harris at 6'2", 230 pounds. He had big 10-inch hands. He has a cartoon type body to him. You know what I mean?
He's like Steven Jackson.
We need to add that comp here into this. He did not test, which I didn't like. We don't have any testing numbers for him, so we don't know what his spark measurables are. But he did have a 54% market share of his team's rushes last year. He was a complete workhorse back. 13% market share of receptions, which is only behind Travisetienne and Kenny Gainwell as far as the guys who we've done. I mean, he's a clear receiving threat. Looked really good doing it. 27% of total team yards on that prolific offense of Alabama last season. 1,891 total yards, 30 total touchdowns. That was a 38% market share. Naja Harris was just a beast. What do you think? The comps that we had were Adrian Peterson, Matt Forte, and I added on Steven Jackson because I really like that one.
I feel like I'd say closer to Matt Forte than an AP. I mean, AP to me is one of those singular players who we've never seen anything quite like since. I guess Todd Gurley would be maybe a comparable kind of player recently and in recent years that we've seen, as far as just that build and just that ability to kind of, be that prototypical back. And I feel like Harris to me is the most prototypical, like, NFL running back in the draft, in my opinion, so far. I mean, some of these other guys seem more hybrid-like. I mean, and the fact that he's such a good pass catcher kind of, just to me kind of maybe elevates him, to one of those top two spots, just because he's one of these prototypical big backs with power, and a nose for the end zone, who can also catch the ball out of the backfield, has soft hands. I mean, he really can do it all. And I feel like in today's NFL, where you have, kind of backs for different situations, this could be one of those backs who you just leave in the game. You put him in the game, you leave him there.
A lot of buzz around Miami, maybe with their pick at 19, maybe being interested in him. He was apparently best friends, I guess, and roommates with Tua Tagovailoa during their time at Alabama. Also,
he would make Tua look a lot better under center.
Right, a bunch of buzz, of course, about Pittsburgh. I mean, everybody in their dog up there with the Pittsburgh media is talking about possibly Najee at 24. I don't know what they'll do. Mike Bann thinks they'll go offensive line. I guess that's neither here nor there. What do you think, Byron? Naja Harris. Trashman says he sees him as a Steven Jackson. What do you think? All right. So Byron's mic isn't working right now. We'll go ahead and get that. Let's go ahead and get that mic figured out, and we will. I guess Trashman and I'll talk about Travis Etienne. Byron, you just chime in whenever you think you got the mic working. Okay. So Travis Etienne out of Clemson, 5'10" and 1/8, 215 pounds. 9 3/8 inch hands, 31 1/8 inch arm. The 40 time, people are going to say anywhere from 4.40 to 4.5. It just depends on kind of where we had the number that we got at 4.44 that we adjusted up to a 4.49. He's a sub 4.5 guy, and he sort of looks faster than that. Good production, not quite as good as far as the total counting numbers or just within within the context of his own offense as a Naja Harris, but he did have the 15% market share of receiving. His head coach Dabo Sweeney calls him a young Walter Payton. He's gonna go quick. My comparison to him, whenever I watch him, I always see Jamal Charles, and I like our guy Matt. We mentioned Matt Kelly, player profiler. I really liked his comparison of Miles Sanders. I thought that made a lot of sense. You have thoughts about Etienne and Byron? Do we have you back yet as far as your voice?
Check one, check two.
Okay,
there we go.
All right, so we got Byron. All right. So Trashman, just Etienne, and then Byron. I just want to hand to you for Naja and Etienne talk.
This Etienne thing is driving me crazy. Down here in the Southeast where I'm from, it's Etienne.
No, but hey man, he says it's just an E, a T, and an N. It's that easy. Etienne.
Maybe it sounds crazy
down in the South where I'm from, as if we're from any damn place else.
Southeast. I'm almost from Louisiana.
It's like etouffee. I think it's French versus Creole, man.
Yeah, I forget. I forget, man. Beaumont's half goddamn Louisiana. That's for sure.
It may sound crazy to me, but I get a little bit of Fred Jackson out of Etienne, and I don't know if that sounds crazy, but I see some of that just in the vigor that he runs with. And he's got that strong lower body. He's a powerful inside runner for a guy who's not, a huge back.
Fred's kind of good. That's a good one. That's a good one. I like that.
But I really like him, and I think he's kind of what we're starting to see as the new prototype in the NFL for running backs. A little bit on the smaller side, but that packs a punch, can run inside, and has good hands. So I really like Etienne. And I see why everybody's so excited about him, just because, and I think Jamal Charles is a nice comparison too. And I think, to me, it's not so much Charles, maybe more of like a Kareem Hunt in just the way that he can kind of run inside and deflect contact like a Kareem Hunt, who was like a little bowling ball coming out of college. So I see some of that there too. But those to me, somewhere between a Fred Jackson and Kareem Hunt for me. And
those are interesting. Those, as usual, man, you get interesting takes from Trashman. You don't hear it anywhere else. If anything from Trashman, he won't be parroting anything he's heard in the media because he doesn't listen to the NFL media. Byron, your thoughts on these two before and then we'll get into some top whatever wide receivers, top whatever running backs. But I wanted to make sure that we had something on these guys just for the people who didn't get the actual write-ups as part of our content and might not have just gotten the collective, haven't listened all offseason to get the collective stuff. Just a quick review on your end. Naja Harris, Etienne, do you have them as your top two? And give us your breakdowns.
I think Etienne is a 15 to 18 touch per game guy, ideally. I don't think he's a transcendent talent. He's clearly a very good running back prospect. I thought Fred Jackson, that's a creative comp. Trashman.
Was it Fred Jackson or Fred? Oh, yeah, it was Fred Jackson.
Fred Jackson?
Yeah, Fred Jackson.
Fred Jackson. I think that's a creative comp to add. I'll definitely have to put that one down. But I'm like you. I had Kareem Hunt. I have Miles Sanders, like Podfather said, and I even saw a little DeAndre Swift. Maybe not quite as laterally twitchy, but that's kind of what I see out of Etienne. So really nice guy, but running back prospect. To me, there's only one clear.
Byron, before you talk about him, just can I ask you about Etienne? Did you think he runs with his feet sort of pointed out a little bit too much? Whenever you watched his gait, did you notice
weird gait and body style? He's a little awkward. I don't want to hold that against him.
No, me either. Because he's so fast. I'm just like, gee whiz, man. Like if your feet were just straightly aligned with your knees, it feels like you could run faster. Maybe a lot of these super fast sprinters are even a little bit pigeon-toed. Like it feels like he's a lot more like a duck kind of duck-footed runner.
I thought like Kareem Hunt kind of always had that angry kind of stomp to his run. I think you see a little bit of that just something a little unusual about his stride out there. Nice player. To me, there's only one true 3-down, workhorse back that's proven. There's other ones that could develop into that, but there's only one proven 3-down true NFL workhorse commodity. It's Naja Harris. I mean, he profiles as just a classic, just volume, just absolute volume hog. I'm expecting more than 20 touches per game for that guy. Obviously, quality 3-down skills and capability. Just the body type. We saw him at the Senior Bowl. I mean, the body type that you just drool over. I mean, it's I sent you a picture the other day of him standing next to Adrian Peterson, and we talked about that at the Senior Bowl. Mm-hmm. He's bigger than Adrian Peterson, right? Crazy. He's more built like a Steven Jackson. The thing I looked that up, Steven Jackson ran 4.45, and he was an awesome pass receiver. So I think it's a good comp minus the speed. So I heard a Larry Johnson comp for Naja. I actually really, really liked that because that wasn't a guy that had top shelf speed, but he really had great, tremendous 3-down capability and produced some big seasons there. Matt Forte has been the comp the entire draft season for Naji. I think is a very, very appropriate one. So I love Naji Harris. To me, I love him. I like him a lot as a real football prospect, and he's going to be a very, very good player. He's not going to break off 50, 60, 80-yard runs, but he's going to bust off a lot of 10, 20, 30, 40-yard runs, kind of like you see even out of somebody like Zeke. Zeke's a 4.4 guy, but he doesn't break off 70 yards like Derrick Henry. He breaks off 20, 30. You're going to see that on Naji. And the cool thing about him at the Senior Bowl, which is it's always hard to scout running backs when there's not full contact. But I've seen enough of these guys at all the training camps over the years that when you see the really special ones, it just leaps off the field, not only how their body type looks, but something about the way they move. And he moves like a very special animal out there, like a different kind of predator or beast, the way he prowls, quick feet, he navigates through the holes. Naji Harris, very nice running back prospect. And so I've got 1.2 in a dynasty rookie draft, and I am just pumped that it's either going to be jamarrchase or Naji Harris.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's.
By the way, and nobody's going to draft Naji Harris not to use him as a workhorse. If you draft Naji Harris, your intention is to give him a lot of touches.
Yeah.
And so I look for that wherever he goes. Slide him right in. I think it's gonna be
Pittsburgh. It's gonna be Pittsburgh, Miami. It's at Atlanta, something like that, right? It's
redraft RB1 wherever he goes. I'll say it now.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so do you want to stay on running backs and go through some of our rankings because that seems like that'll probably go a little bit quicker, and then we'll get over to wide receivers. Okay, so at running backs, So Byron and I feel like both. I mean, for me, Naja is right up at the very top. Trashman do you have Naja at the very top?
I mean, yeah. If we're just talking about a guy you can slide right in to your fantasy lineup, right, and speculating that he'll be a workhorse back, then yes.
Okay, so I think what the consensus is after that. Do you guys just want to go like? Because after this, it feels like it goes Javonte Williams at least for me, out of North Carolina, 215 pounds. He's got the requisite size. He did have the disappointing 40 time high 4.5s at a Mac Brown home cooked North Carolina pro day. So you adjust that thing up to about a 4.63 if I know Mac. But man, he does whenever I watch Javonte Williams, I just can't help but see beast mode. 22 touchdowns last season. That's even with Michael Carter in the same backfield as him, who I'm sure that we'll talk about briefly. But I even see a little bit of Darius Geis whenever I watch Javonte Williams. Of course, those two guys, what we know about Geis now versus what we know about Javonte Williams could have gone to school at academic Ivy League scholarship. That's what he was going to do because the teams that were recruiting him wanted him to play linebacker, and he was just like, man, I don't want to play linebacker. UNC comes in and says, hey, we'll let you play running back. And he's like, well, that's a good school. I can go there. Smart guy. Seems like a really upstanding guy that you'd love to have on your football team. So I hate comparing him to guys who turned out to be a complete degenerate and a persona non grata and a creep. But they kind of, the running styles really remind me of one another. So a lot of people think that, Javonte Williams, I wouldn't argue with anybody that had Javonte Williams as their top guy in the class or something. I don't think it would, I don't agree, but I don't think it's, I think that these are the three guys who you can make that argument regarding. So, I think if you made the argument about anybody else in the class, I think it's a little bit crazy. Nothing against Matt Waldman, who has Trey Sermon as his number one guy.
If you were to give one of these running backs one carry, to break something off for you in fantasy, would it not be Javonte?
It depends on where the carry is occurring.
If you need to depend on a guy to break some tackles, to make some moves, to get downfield, really, is there a more dynamic and powerful? He's
the most elusive. If you believe Pro Football Focus's elusiveness metrics, he's the most elusive running back in the history of their college football scouting.
So for me, I can definitely see that argument for Javonte as the top pick.
Led the nation in forced missed tackles last year, despite having basically a 50-50 split with his teammate, another really good player, Michael Carter. Byron, Javonte Williams. Do you like him? Is he your running back 3?
Yeah, I like him. He's my running back 3. I think he plays just like a little bit bigger MJD. I like the comps you guys had too. I even put Frank Gore. I had MJD and Frank Gore. I think Gore was a 215-pounder. So to me, those are all in the slot. And you just look down at that list, you say, man, it's a pretty damn good player. I think he's going to be – it's a bad class. He's going to be elevated. He's going to get drafted to a point where he's going to be used. So, yeah, he's my 3 and very, very solid prospect.
Okay.
I think with running backs, for me, it's just –
I've one sleeper.
Yeah, I've come, but before we talk about it, let's just talk about for Dynasty. There is a pretty big drop off after that, right? There's a pretty big drop off after that. So if you just with your next pick, let's just talk about our next one. For me, it's Trey Sermon out of Ohio State. He's got the weight at 213. We didn't get to see him run. The production throughout his final year at Ohio State, it wasn't great, but he came on like bananas at the end. If you watch some of the tape, really, really good, very little wasted motion. So smooth with the way that he's not a jump cut guy. He's not a cut on a dime guy, but he's a dude who he's like a car that just corners really well. There's nothing too violent about it, but it's really smooth. And he can really change direction on the fly without it looking like it's any sort of violent, Shady McCoy, Devin Singletary type of movement. And at 213, it's just I see these other guys. Can you get Chuba Hubbard there? He's at 210, but he had a disappointing final season, disappointing pro day. Kenny Gainwell is who else I would consider there, but he's only at 201. Who do you guys each have as your running back 4? And then we can each throw out a sleeper.
Well, I'll reflect back to, I think it was the morning of day 3 of the Senior Bowl, Alex. It was a terrible running back class, and you and I were sitting next to each other in the bleachers. We looked over and we said, I mean, what about Trey Sermon? Because he was standing on the sideline the whole week with Naja Harris and Devonta Smith. And over the years, it's usually the guys that don't work out that are, they're usually a lot of reasons. If they're healthy, they don't work out because, they kind of already consider themselves maybe good prospects who are there more to just do business than to really, play football at that point. Maybe they don't feel like they need to show something at the Senior Bowl for whatever reason. So I remember us thinking back and saying, well, dude, maybe we need to think about what the deal is with Trey Sermon, because it looks just from the crop of the Senior Bowl, this is going to be a weak class. And I feel like we've come full circle. I mean, he certainly doesn't, just blow you away, but he ends up as my number 4. I have Jamal Williams as my comp for Trey Sermon, which is like a good, it's a good, pretty solid running back in the NFL.
What do you think about my LaMichael Pirine, Damian Harris?
I think those are all fine. They're you hope he's better than Pirine, but the other guys you get a Jamal Williams, a Damian Harris. I think he's shown something. The other thing that makes me remember from that day of the Senior Bowl, running back wise, is do you remember Naja Harris just palming his helmet?
10 inch hands. Yeah, dude. He has the cartoon proportions of like a Tyron Smith.
It's why it's part of the reason he's a sick receiver as a running back.
Trashman, you're number 4 running back. Assuming that those are your top 3, I'm assuming.
They're on my top 3, not necessarily in that order. I like Javonte a little bit more than Travisetienne.
Okay.
Kenny Gainwell is a more dynamic player to me than
he's good.
And he was a quarterback, in high school. He's got really good, really high football IQ. He's got enormous hands considering his size, almost 10-inch hands.
Can you believe that is 10-inch hands. Can you believe that he had an 18% market share of receptions in 2019? Can you believe that he had 2,069 total yards, 30% of his team's offensive yards in 2019, and he also had 16 total touchdowns. So that's 2019. So last year, Antonio Gibson was a rookie last year. That was on a team that had Antonio Gibson.
Right. For me, like with today's NFL, Kenny Gainwell to me is a more exciting prospect than
the question is how many
than Trey Sermon.
Will he get at 201?
So the thing is, he doesn't need him. He doesn't need him.
Fair enough.
There was a stat.
I like volume.
Team, it's pretty simple.
I like volume too, but Trey Sermon, my comp for him was David Montgomery. And I think he's the kind of player who, in the right position, in the right situation, he can be that guy for you, can be that volume back who gets you that yardage and gets you and is in there on the goal line. But, we rarely see that in today's NFL, that workhorse back who's getting 3 down back. And he's just not that exciting to me, a player, Trey Sermon. Like you're saying, Alex, he's not going to be that guy who's going to break off a bunch of huge chunk plays. He can get to the corner pretty quickly, but if he is not your workhorse back, if he's not your 3-down back, he's not going to do much for you in fantasy. I feel like Gainwell, he's a guy who you can put he's going to be a PPR monster. And he's going to be a guy who also can run inside the tackles, who also has a nose for the end zone. So for me, I'd rather take a shot on him than someone like a Trey Sermon, but I'm not going to argue with putting Trey Sermon ahead of him. You guys
sometimes it's as simple as the NFL team just saying, "Look, I'm just going to tap that Memphis running back pipeline."
Right?
Even if you want to poo-poo Darrell Henderson, the guy's shown he can play in spots. You got Henderson, Pollard, Gibson. Those guys are playing big roles in the NFL. The 201 scared me off a little bit. I think it's an interesting topic, is basically who is your RB5 is a funny topic, because that's going to be wildly different, I think, for most people that have this similar top 4s. To your point, I think Trey Sermon, and maybe why I threw Jamal Williams out there, doesn't look like a starting running back for any large period of time in the NFL, a rotational guy, but one that's going to get action, and one that if you found out he was getting 15 or 20 touches in a game, if you knew he was going to get the rock in a game because of an injury situation or whatnot, then you'd be comfortable flexing him in fantasy at that point.
Yeah. Or like we always say, the min price DFS kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll each talk about our sleepers, but just a quick reminder, we'll have some wide receiver talk after this, but for our pro members, you can find all this content at rosterwatch.com. I'd imagine, Byron and Trashman, it'll be up to these guys when they want to get their rankings into the sheet that I'll share. But as soon as these guys get them in, I'm going to get it up. So be looking for that over at rosterwatch.com. And that's for the running backs, the wide receivers. Of course, there'll be links in there to all the different content that is associated with this stuff. And of course, the Dynasty rookie sheets will go up right after the NFL draft. We'll also have a big update to version 4.0 of the best ball cheat sheet right after the draft. So it's a big week of content. We also will be on from 3 to 7 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio during day 3 of the NFL draft, doing our breakdowns there. So all that good stuff coming up this week that you can look out for us. All right. So Byron, I don't really have a sleeper at running back. I think I'm not.
Who's your 5? That's the funny question. And by the way, I have an extra 10 or 15 minutes here. So
my 5 is my 5 is Kenny Gainwell after Trey Sermon.
That's cool. That's good. That's pretty consistent. He's my 6. I have Kylan Hill as my 5. His tape is awesome.
See, that's a sleeper. That's a sleeper.
Awesome.
That should be your sleeper then if you have Kylan Hill at 5, because I need to move him up above Larry Roundtree. That's for sure. After Larry Roundtree ran his 4.73 or whatever.
Kylan Hill's tape is awesome. And that guy is a stud receiver that really only was utilized that way this last season. He had 30 targets in 3 games in 2020. And the guy, He's a freak receiver. And then as a runner, he's got a really tremendous position-specific skills with the feet, the vision, even some lateral agility. Where he disappointed, obviously, was the 4.62 adjusted pro day time. It was a 4.57 if you take it for face value, which if you think back and you think about the Alexander Madisons of the world, maybe even the Vaughns of the world that were like 4.6 guys at the combine, but then went and ran like 4.55 at pro day, it was good enough. And those guys have shown some juice when they've been in there. So if he's more of a 4.55, 4.57 guy, if he's sub 4.6, if we can give him that, because the thing about Kylan Hill too, Alex, was even though the 40 was disappointing, let's see here. I think
he had a 76th percentile broad jump, a 70th percentile vertical jump. He had actually
70% burst. Yeah.
70% burst score. I'm sure is something that it was somewhere right in there. Yeah. I can't believe he also weighed in at 214 pounds, which is, I guess that's about where he weighed in at the Senior Bowl.
He's got the size over these guys. So honestly, my comps for him were Tony Pollard, Keyshawn Vaughn, and he ran about 1/10 of a second slower than Miles Sanders, but I think he has just a little bit of that type of verse. He's not going to be a 20 touch per game guy, but I thought a Tony Pollard, Keyshawn Vaughn are reasonable comps for Kylan Hill, and those are 2 guys I like, man.
All right, let's go into the wide receivers.
Real quick, one dark horse for me is Michael Carter.
Okay,
2,000-yard back-to-back season, along with Javonte Williams. I think he can produce.
Yeah, he's good. Did you have a comp for him? Our comps from the Senior Bowl were like Gio Bernard, DeAndre Washington,
Devin Singletary.
Okay. I can see it. I compared Jamar Jefferson to Devin Singletary because they're 2 guys who look like the same stylistically, and 2 guys that tested like shit as compared to what we
Gio was another comp for me.
It's a good comp.
Okay, let's go to the wide receivers. And Trashman, let's just start with you because Byron, I don't know. I have Jamar Chase at number 1. Byron has Jamar Chase at number 1. You said you don't. So who do you have as your number 1 wide receiver?
There's really only one other option that it could be, and that's Jalen Waddle.
Well, I never know with you. I don't know if you're going to say Dwayne Escritch or something.
I think Jalen Waddle is a better Dwayne Escritch. It's amazing. Watching this guy on tape. He's pretty incredible to watch. He just kind of glides out there, and you look. And he's just blown up. let me catch my breath on Jalen Waddle real quick. It's just he's just such an exciting player to watch. I don't remember watching any other tape on any receivers going into this draft class who I just like was enamored with on the screen. And I know you guys had more, up close experience with some of these players, but I think, maybe just being able to watch tape, at least in the past for me, has paid off in being able to like evaluate some of these really special players. And I just feel like Jalen Waddle is a special player. He's a little bit bigger than Devonta Smith. He's a little bit more rocked up than Devonta Smith. He doesn't really look like it just looking on the field just because he's such a quick, fast, smooth runner. But he's a guy that can just break open plays effortlessly. To me, he's the most exciting player on the field. Whenever he's on the field, he was used kind of like a utility player. But I feel like if he was on the field as much as,
like he would have been last year, he would have been if he didn't get hurt.
I feel like if he was on the field as much as a Devonta Smith or Jamarrchase, I don't think there would be any question that he would be the number one receiving prospect coming into the draft.
Okay. I mean, it's just, there's a little bit of projection there, but he's clearly awesome. Byron, you have Jalen Waddle ahead of Devonta Smith. It feels like the NFL does. I know the NFL does.
Yeah, they should, rightfully so. You can't help but think of Tyreek Hill when you watch Jalen Waddle. When you start thinking about, a player like Tyreek Hill, you push that player right to the top of your board, right? I just see a player that is way more powerful than Hollywood Brown or Henry Ruggs. He's got that same type of speed, but he plays with the power. That's what's so good about Tyreek Hill. He's got electric speed, but he plays with incredible power that he runs with. And I see the same thing. And to Trashman's point, they're going to get Waddle the ball in a number of ways. He just looks like a really good player, an awesome like chess piece for your football team as a real, NFL player from a real football perspective. And then for fantasy, I just think if you start saying, all right, Marquise Brown, Tyreek Hill, like those are pretty interesting fantasy players. So yeah, I got Jalen Waddle as my number 2.
All right, let's just each maybe here's what we'll do. Let's each just go over our top 5, and then we'll each give one sleeper. If you want to see the rest of on just a super deep class, we have like 33 of these guys ranked. Go to rosterwatch.com. If you're not a pro member, get a pro membership, man. You can support the podcast by doing that. Of course, you can also leave a rating and a review in Apple Podcasts. We certainly appreciate that. Thanks to everybody who's doing it. And if you're watching this on YouTube, if you could like, subscribe, leave a comment for the old algorithm, that would be very helpful. So here for me, it goes at 1. For me, I have Jamarrchase. At 2, I still have Devonta Smith. Although you guys make the excellent point for Jalen Waddle, and the way things will turn out in our cumulative rankings, Jalen Waddle is going to be number 2 anyway. So since Byron has him at 2, Trashman has him at 1, he'll end up being number 2. At number 3, I have Waddle. At number 4, I have Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss. He's just, to me, he looks like a mix of John Brown and Tyler Lockett. 178 pounds, so he's a little bit bigger at 5'9.5", 9 3/8 inch hands, and his hands are just so good. Generally, when you have such an explosive separator like this, he's not just the best framer of the football with the suction hands that you love so very much. Anytime he gets the football, we talk about Tyreek Hill stuff. I look at Elijah Moore and see some Tyreek Hill stuff too, right? If you look at player profile, he has a 97th percentile agility score. Trashman even had a 90.4% grade versus man coverage. That was elite. If you look at if you look at PFF, he went up against some really good. He went up against some really good corners. The guys, the J.C. Horns, the Patrick Surtains. He didn't have as much trouble with them as some of the rest of them did. The adjusted 4.40 was a little bit disappointing, but I'm not worried about that. It's a sub 4.340 at a pro day. Damn, how much can you really expect out of these guys? So Elijah Moore for me, just when I look at everything, and consider everything, I have him as my number 4. And then after him, it's another Moore at number 5, Rondale Moore out of Purdue. I know he's only 5'7", 180 pounds, small hands at 8 3/4 inches. But this guy's a fucking gymnast, like his body, like he said in the interview with Byron. For an 18-year-old to come into the Big Ten and have the season that he did whenever he first came on at Purdue was basically unlike anything I'd ever seen. And I don't worry about the injury stuff with him. People worry about the hamstring injuries, but the injuries that he had, were they don't seem to me like they're indicative of anything that is going to be problematic moving forward. The NFL teams, as he talked about with Byron, having to talk to him about any of that stuff. He was a great producer with at least 26% of the market share in basically every category that we care about. If you take his 2020 season and you filter it with his best season, he didn't play much in 2020. Rondale Moore with an adjusted 4.36 40. He is his testing scores were I don't have the Spark stuff pulled up, but I just like to see with Ron. Let me just look at Rondale real quick with his percentiles, because he not only had, he was off the charts even with his bench press and stuff like. So he had a 79th percentile 20 short shuttle, an 89th percentile 3-cone, an 82nd percentile broad jump, a 98th percentile vertical jump, a 96th percentile 40, a 96th percentile 20-yard split. I'm buying Rondale Moore. Like Trashman said, he gets mesmerized watching Jalen Waddle on film. I get mesmerized watching Rondale Moore. I've always been high on him, and it's hard because there are guys who I've left off, who you guys will have in your top 5 that I won't. But that's why we have a cumulative ranking together. So that's it for me. Jamarrchase, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore. And then after we each give our top 5, we'll each give a sleeper. So who wants to go next? Trashman?
Sure. Top 5, I got Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Jamarrchase. Then for me, when I think about a guy who really doesn't have a lot of holes in his game, who kind of does everything well, and I think is just really a plug and play in the NFL, and I think is actually going to play better in the NFL than he did in college and be a better fit, and that's Rashad Bateman for me.
He's a guy that I'm scared as hell not to have in my top 5. I just worry about the whole. He's 190 pounds. He says that's because he lost weight from COVID.
Yeah,
I don't know if I believe him, because people lie like crazy when they want to get a job.
That's true, but for me, he's such a good. He's an excellent route runner, and he does so many things well. He's a technician. He does the little things really well. That to me, that doesn't bother me as much for Bateman. And I'm just looking at like the negatives. I just don't really, outside of, I had him as not having elite speed on tape, but then he runs a 4.39. So for me, he's got very few negatives in my opinion.
He had a 4.39 at the Exos Combine, and that was a laser time of 4.4 at the. I need to. I'm not sure that he ran it at his pro day. Do I have the pro day number here inside of here? Rashad Bateman. So we have that. I guess I haven't marked if that's the pro day or if that's the adjusted one at 4.45. So I'll look into that and make sure that it's updated correctly here in the sheet before we get it up for our pro subscribers.
My only 2 knocks against him were that it didn't seem like he had elite speed, and he's more smooth than explosive. And to me, if he does have
that's
the speed,
like Chris Godwin, right? It's like you weren't expecting that speed, and then he had it. You're like, holy shit, we got a different kind of animal here.
Right. So to me, there aren't really any negatives to Bateman's game, and he does all the little things really well. He's one of the more precise players that we have coming into the draft. So it's hard for me not to bet on him. I feel like he's like a Michael Thomas type player. He's got that kind of potential to be that kind of player on a team. I think Michael Thomas and Allen Robinson were my comps for him. And if that's the kind of player that you're going to get out of Bateman, who I think is going to be a better NFL player than he was in college, it's hard for me not to have him in my top 5. Rounding out the top 5 for me, I got to throw him in there. I got to put him in there. and that's Dwayne Escritch. I mean, he had the most all-purpose yards in college football. Most all-purpose yards in college football in 2020. Why not?
No,
I wouldn't be a true trash man if I didn't throw somebody like there in there.
He looked awesome for a half a practice at the Senior Bowl, for what it's worth. He did.
Yeah.
I mean, some would argue that he was the most impressive player at the Senior Bowl.
I think anybody would say that Mac Jones was probably the most impressive player at that Senior Bowl.
Or receiver. I mean, so for me, it's Dwayne Escritch. I feel like there's an argument there for sure for Terrace Marshall. I'm just not that excited about Terrace Marshall. He doesn't really. I think Terrace Marshall could very well be a better NFL player, but for me, for my money, I just want to throw somebody there who's exciting, who can break up in big plays, who can do a lot for you, who can be used like a utility knife. And to me, that's Dwayne Escritch. And I know I'm going to get flack for that, but
that's fine.
I like
that's
him
fine. It'll just be in our cumulative rankings. We'll have Escritch higher than people, and that's fine. I don't mind it. The one thing I want to say about Terrace Marshall is that I was listening on Michael Lombardi's podcast yesterday. He just said it in real passing, but he said that Terrace Marshall's had some teams have some medical red flags on Terrace Marshall to where he might end up falling a little bit farther than we thought. Not that that's neither here nor there as far as, us and our own rankings, but just something to kind of keep in mind there. All right, Byron, your top 5, then we'll each go through with a sleeper.
I got a top 6.
All right.
By the way, that medical didn't seem to affect Terrace Marshall at Pro Day too much. And Trashman, I like Escritch. I was a little disappointed with his athletic testing, his burst, his agility were a little bit less than I'd hoped for on those measurements, because he looked explosive at the Senior Bowl, to your point. Also a 21% catch radius over at Player Profiler. My top 6, very clear: Jamarrchase, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Elijah Moore at number 4. I like your John Brown, Tyler Lockett comps, Alex. I had Marquise Brown and Brandon Cooks for my Elijah Moore comps.
Brandon Cook's a good one.
Yep. Terrace Marshall is my number 5. I think you could push him as high as number 4 in this class. I split the hairs a little bit due to that medical that you just referenced. Don't want to get too low on Terrace Marshall, though. Looks a lot like DJ Chark. I've seen him in person coming out of the SEC. He put some really good film down. And in a class of small wide receivers, I mean, he's got some length at almost 6'3", 205. And like I said, if there's an issue with medicals, it didn't show up at Pro Day because he ran pretty well, put up some pretty good scores. They were 39-inch vertical, 10.5 broad, 20 reps on the bench. So it was an 85% burst rating over at Player Profile. So Terrace Marshall out of LSU is going to be my number 5. And then to round out the clear-cut top 6 is, as you guys mentioned, Rashad Bateman. To me, he looks a lot like Juju and Nelson Aguilar. He's got more of Aguilar's body. Juju's more of a 215-pound dude, but I think he kind of plays like Juju and Nelson Aguilar's body. I split the hairs with him and Marshall just based on SEC versus Big Ten, and Marshall obviously having the size advantage and even a little bit of a speed advantage with the bigger frame there. So that's my top 6, Alex.
All right, let's get your sleeper. We'll get Trashman's sleeper. We'll get mine, and then we'll get out of here.
I can't just give you one sleeper, man.
Give us a few sleepers.
My two guys in this draft are Amari Rodgers out of Clemson and Seth Williams out of Auburn. 2 totally different players, but both kids that really have a chance that I got to evaluate up close and personal this offseason. And then just way, way down the list, I think you got to look at the size speed guys, Alex. So if you're getting way, way deep into these draft rankings, down in number 15, number 20 in your rankings, I think you look at guys like Des Fitzpatrick out of Louisville. We saw at the Senior Bowl, big guy that looks good out there. Nico Collins, another Senior Bowler, big guy, ran a lot faster than
I would prefer Nico Collins every day of the week over Des Fitzpatrick.
And Fitzpatrick had the better Senior Bowl. You hated Nico Collins, and by the way, I think I won.
I like Nico. I think I like
bet on Nico Collins running under 4.6 because he sure as hell did.
He
didn't think that was going to happen.
I didn't think it was going to happen. That's what I'm saying. Well, when I see that Nico Collins actually runs okay, it's like I'm just like, man, he can't separate it. He looks like he looked like a lumbering version of a Mike Evans or something out there. I'm just not
he's
sure.
Not a separator. You worry about that a little bit. And the other two guys right there, Josh Palmer and Tamori and Terry. So I think if you're looking late, you look for the size, speed guys like that. But if you're looking a little earlier in the draft, my guys are Amari Rodgers and Seth Williams.
Trashman, you got any? Most people will call Dwayne Escritch a sleeper. Who knows? He could end up going day 2, but who do you got?
Nico Collins for me. Just the size and the speed combination. I feel like those kind of guys, he could sneak up on you like a Kenny Golladay in the NFL. He can end up being somebody's number 1 big play receiver really easily. I think he gives the effort that he can give on more consistently in the NFL. I think he can be a better NFL player than he was in college. I think he will be a better player in the NFL than he was in college.
Like Donovan Peoples-Jones. Those guys have very similar profiles. I know we're not all the way there yet with Peoples-Jones, but similar track.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of potential. So for me, I feel like a big guy like that who can run 4.5, that's pretty special to me, and it offers a really high ceiling.
And by the way, Jim Nagy said he liked Nico Collins more than Donovan Peoples-Jones too. It seems like the NFL like him even better than DPJ.
Amari Rodgers is another guy who I think is rocked up and in the right situation could be a real game breaker.
Yeah, and so it's like I'd like to usually go out with a bang, man, but it's just like you guys took it away from me. Like bang, bang, Amari Rodgers, dude, that's my sleeper. I wanted to go out on that. But I'll say one another guy just to mention, Cade Johnson, South Dakota State. I mean, he's
somebody I really loved.
He didn't run quite as fast as I thought, but Jesus Christ, man, you wanted to talk about going out on a high note, an exciting note, a big note. Go on YouTube.com and put on your Cade Johnson highlights.
He's incredible to watch on tape.
All right.